Here's a place where all of us can be safe. Our stories of transformation can be safe, and all the things we want to research are safe here. This is Safe Space with Cheyenne. I'm really excited you're here, and I hope you stick around for a while, because I've got a lot to show you before I leave Earth. I love you guys.
Hello, welcome back to your safe space. It is Cheyenne, and today I have Angilie Kapoor with me from Oversight Global. So she comes on today to not only talk to us about her 20 years of experience and, well, multiple facets, but also why she found her niche in helping first-time managers get over all of those weird greenhorn hiccups. I was a first-time manager, so I know that I fouled up a lot as a first-time manager, and I surely wish that I could have had somebody with an outside perspective like Angilie all those years ago. But I'm happy to find you today and bring you on for our audience. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you. How are you?
Oh, doing great. Hanging out with my dogs, loving life.
That's always great.
Yeah. So tell me about what made you want to start this company in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, I think you pretty much mentioned in the intro. I have experience coming from healthcare management as a first-time manager and also climbing that management ladder. And you mentioned it that first-time managers, it's hard, man. It's difficult. We have all kinds of struggles and challenges, and nobody really prepares us for that. There isn't any type of official training that we receive or anything like that. And so, I struggled and I watched others struggle. I've talked to so many other people like yourself that mentioned that they struggled. And, when I got to a point in my career where I wanted to kind of pivot and do something a little bit different, I really had a passion to address this gap in preparation and training that I really saw and was feeling and experiencing. So that's how I got into leadership coaching and specifically helping first-time managers.
I love that you are also outside of the company, so you might be able to even help with maybe the blind spots. Because I know that I did go through a certain form of manager training. We had a
Mm-hmm.
lot of training in the company we went with, but it was such a cake box recipe
Right.
that I know that we talked about this when we talked earlier. One of my biggest pet peeves in it was I really almost felt like a drone in it. Like if I didn't just assimilate with everybody else in this cake recipe, then I really wasn't going to be successful. Like
Mhm.
they already had the templates laid out for you. Don't reinvent the wheel.
Exactly. Exactly. And I mean, I experienced similar to the same. I mean, I did have some I call it light management training because it wasn't really what I found later to be kind of the recipe for success, which is really learning about yourself, becoming self-aware, becoming conscious, and really becoming authentic in your leadership style. They didn't teach anything about that. They mentioned emotional intelligence, and you went through that for maybe a day or two. But that was really, the basic stuff about being aware and conscious. But like you're saying, it was really my training was really more about, the structure of the company, how to work with HR, the different, employee laws and things like that. And so, I mean, I found that it was helpful to know all that stuff. You needed to know that for what you were doing in your position. But for me, it was really missing the key elements of how to make that transition from going to being an employee to then being somebody in a position of authority. And then, missing a lot of the components of, it's such a different frame of an approach and perspective and frame of mind, and it's a completely different skill set than you're used to. And addressing the big challenges that we face as a first time manager and really where that comes from and how to overcome those.
Especially when you say first time manager, I remember sitting down with my boss and I was 23 when I got into management, which I thought was still very young. So
Yeah.
excited for the opportunity and I was a little blown away. to be that young and in management. And one of the things that he like really had to drill in my head was you have to understand that you're a leader. He's like, do
Mhm.
you understand that like you are in charge of everything? And it shook me to my sweet little 23-year-old core, honestly, because when he says you're in charge of everything, I was in charge of every guest that walked in the building. I was in charge of all the employees, hiring, all of the money in the building. If any accidents came, that was, like the fear in the back of my mind, like, oh my gosh, if we had to call an ambulance or fire or police, like all of these things, like I really started
Mhm.
feeling like a little baby in those situations. And yes, all of those happened while I was in management. I feel like
Mhm.
I could write a tell-all book about what I experienced from the public and all of the crazy things that happened while I was there. But for you going through your coaching business, how do you help them understand like how to really embody the leadership as they're first coming into it?
Yeah, it's great that you kind of mentioned that your boss at the time told you about, what a big responsibility you had and also that you needed to be a leader. And one of the things that I really teach and impress upon is that when you're put in a position of authority, if when you're made a manager, that doesn't make you a leader. I know that, we've really been drilled and taught to be thinking of a manager and leader as the same thing, but they're not. When you get into a management position, that title doesn't make you a leader. Becoming a leader really is a journey and a transition and developmental and transformational journey that you need to go on before you are able to influence people the way that you need to as a leader. So that's one of the things that I really impress upon first time managers is that, you are a manager, but you have quite a ways to go before you are a true leader. And again, in our society, we tend to see a manager and leader as the same thing, but they couldn't be further from each other, really. And then the other thing is, it was great that I think your boss, kind of pulled you aside and said, you have this really big responsibility of being in charge of everything and being in charge of everyone. I think that's something that's also lacking for first time managers and them understanding and being told just how big their responsibility is. I'm always talking about, especially lately with, the mental health issues that we're having right now. And leaders, workplace leaders, managers in the workplace have a huge responsibility and the impact that they have on their teams and on their customers. And, again, a lot of people don't realize that, but if you think about it, if you're working a 9 to 5 job, you are at your work more than you are at home. You're with the people that you work with more than you're with your own family. And what the type of environment that a manager creates and maintains in the workplace has a huge impact on their staff members. They bring what they have at the workplace home, and then that spreads out into their neighborhoods and their communities and cities and countries. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. So that's why I really press upon managers that the type of environment that you're creating in the workplace has a much more bigger impact than you even realize it does.
Great answer. I'm getting so many flashbacks and memories from just talking about this. I'm like, oh gosh, which way do I take it? So yes, you're absolutely right on the management and leadership. The immense amount of pressure that comes on for a first time manager, and then almost
Yeah.
imposter syndrome, like
Oh, yeah.
about the imposter syndrome, especially if you like promoted within from the staff that were on the same level with, and now all of a sudden you have to adhere to a completely different set of rules that you didn't have to. You would technically have to keep people in line that you know
Mhm.
have to keep in line before. And like, how do you really toe that line? Especially again, if it's an internal promotion where, 1 minute that person's your employee friend, like your coworker friend, and now like it's a job performance review and you like for lack of a better term, you almost have to like reprimand them even
Right.
2 weeks ago before your promotion. It's kind of like a weird evolutionary
Right.
line that we've all gone through in some promotion format.
Exactly. And that's actually exactly what happened to me. I got promoted from within. So exactly what you're saying. The people that I had now become, a boss to, I was on the same team with, and I was friends with a lot of them. So I really went through this transition of, okay, how do I go from friend to boss? How do I go from team member to boss and things like that. So I struggled with that for a while. Especially the friend to boss thing. For me, it was really hard and really awkward for me to all of a sudden find myself being, the boss to people who were my friends that I had these personal relationships with, and we hung out with each other when we weren't at work. So that for me was a particularly tricky transition. And it's definitely something that I talk to other people about, that they find themselves in that same situation. And again, it's you really having to, again, realize the transition that you're making from going from, just another member of the team to then becoming the person who is responsible for those team members. And it really takes understanding the different hats that you wear, and how you are responsible for the people that are on your staff. And it's a really tricky and hard transition, but it is doable. And again, that comes from understanding what your expectations are, understanding what your role is, having clarity in that, and then also figuring out what type of leader and manager that you want to be. How do you want people to see you and describe you, instead of kind of letting that happen by chance or circumstance? So again, the first piece is really understanding what your role is, and then identifying, I call it creating your leader identity, really identifying what type of leader that you want to be.
So if I wanted to identify what type of leader I wanted to be, like what is this kind of like figuring out your core values? Is it something like that?
Exactly. Figuring out your core values, what type of mindset you need to have or want to have, and again, how you want people to see you and describe you if they were to ask, what type of boss is Cheyenne? What would they say? What would you want them to say? So you can figure out what it is that you need to do to embody what it is that you're trying to accomplish.
I would get mixed reviews on that answer, just to be honest. From my greenhorn days all the way like through the peak era and then the burnout phase for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
And I mean, it happens. And I always like to say, like, whoever you are in everybody's mind really isn't any of your business or your responsibility to uphold that image. So I think it's great that you say core values. I was given core values in my company. So like
Right.
everyone has the same core values. I didn't really realize you could like have your own personal ones. Like I had personal goals outside of work, but
Mhm.
I got into the company at such a young age that the company honestly became my identity for the longest time. I worked
Yes.
so hard in every level that I did. And even if I was burnt out, I mean, it's not like I was very approachable about my burnout. I mean, I was very like
Mhm.
and sarcastic about it, where I was like, hey, not everybody, likes every day of their job, sometimes things get hard, da 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 da, like however I had to do it. But then there were just other times where I would be like, oh my gosh, this company is my identity. Like I don't really know besides like my love for yoga what I'm doing outside of this. So is there
Mhm.
that you teach people, especially when they're getting into leadership? Because you want to prove yourself in your company. You want to have like high performance and do all the things you want to do. But what happens when the company becomes your identity? Is that
Right.
proactive for your authenticity and honestly your mental health?
Right. No, it's actually kind of crazy everything that you're describing. You would have been my perfect client
I
because
really
you
would have. I
you
wish I would
you
have had you.
you said exactly the experience that I went through. But yeah, I mean, I totally get where you're coming from with all of that. Kind of having the focus more on the career than on anything else, and really having imposter syndrome about what you're doing, and the core values thing. I mean, if you most people do not, like you, don't know what their core value is, or are excuse me, or that they can even have their own, like you were saying, that, most people, when I ask them what their core values are, they, like you, rattle off their company core values. And I'm like, okay, that's great. That's the place where you work at. But what about your personal core values? And most people are like, well, so yeah, I mean, it's really important, and it all comes back to self-awareness. And my tagline for my company is awareness, consciousness, and transformation, because I really found in my journey, and also working with others, that really the key component to you becoming a leader is to get to know yourself, is get to know who you are, get to like who you are, and get to love who you are. And, I mean, when I first started, I felt so lost. I couldn't find my footing. I felt like I was drowning in the sea of, unknowns, and not really knowing what I was doing, and things like that. But at the same time, you had to like appear like you knew what you were doing, So it was kind of like these two different split personalities of what you were doing. And I dove headfirst into reading tons of books and taking these courses and going to seminars. And most of the time, they just really confused the heck out of me, because I took in all of this knowledge and all of these insights, but I had no idea, how to implement them, in what, way I was supposed to do things and things like that. So I was really struggling with the right guidance on what I was supposed to be implementing, and how and where and things like that. And it was really when I really dove into emotional intelligence, is where my self-awareness and self-discovery journey started for me, because I realized that, with all of my overwhelm and the internal challenges that I was having, I was becoming very reactive. And, I would get emotional whenever I got stressed out and overwhelmed and things like that. So I realized that I had to get a handle on my emotions and how I was responding and reacting to things. And that's when I discovered emotional intelligence. And it really, really started me to think, as I started to get better about my handling my emotions and managing them. And also I realized that as I got better about doing that for myself, I was able to see that in other people, in my staff. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. So the better I get to know myself, it helps me see what's going on in other people, and ultimately be a more effective leader. And so that's where I really discovered that the key really is learning more about yourself and managing yourself and becoming a leader of you first. And then you're able to do that externally for others.
I love that you bring up the reactivity, because that was definitely a big thing that I had. I would either get supremely reactive in a way that I was completely remorseful of afterwards, whether I apologized or not, or I would just shut down, and I would be like, I have 20 things that I need to do right now on top of all of these other things. So I am just going to go like blinders focused on what I need to do, which when you're in business where you have to have a lot of personality, like what I would say, like our concept was like running a Broadway show where behind the curtain, like shit's going haywire. We're trying to keep, everything together. But then out in front of everybody, besides the timing that you had to do, the coordination you had to have with every facet of the company, but then the smiles and the presentation and the keywords and just this, we love our job thing all of the time. That you brought up, like splitting yourself, because by the end of it, especially with having earpieces in where every employee is talking to you and you're talking to someone. I mean, I bet I had 30 personalities by the end of my career in my head, because I split into so many different people, as you would say, wore so many different hats. But when you notice yourself like start wearing thin, is that what you mean? Like maybe having some, like EFT is something that comes to mind, just to like calm yourself down and bring yourself back to center. Like, are there little tips and tricks that you can give people if they see themselves like going closer to that edge of like how to pull
Mm-hmm.
themselves back so they don't really like blow the whole shift? Or even, such a long question, but this popped in my head. I would always hear like, if you want your staff at 100%, you have to be at like 110, 120, 150, da 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 da. Because if you're performing at,
Right.
they could perform at 70 and below, and you don't want that. So there's a
Mm-hmm.
amount of pressure, not like leadership aside, just in management, the shift, numbers, all of that, to
Right.
be this honestly like unrealistic at some point with all of the pressure, but pushing through. Like, how do you coach people to pull themselves back from the edge, especially when you've lived through that reactivity and realized it wasn't good for anybody?
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, so definitely. I mean, when I started and I had the exact same issues that you were having, I would either, you know, get so reactive that I'd explode. And I never meant to do that. It would just kind of, it would happen and they were like, "Oh my God, I can't believe that happened." you know? So I'd explode and, one of the biggest times was when I completely lost my crap during a team meeting with one of my divisions of my team, and got, like you're saying, I felt so bad. I felt so sorry. I had no idea why it had even happened. I mean, now I do in hindsight, because I just was too stressed and overwhelmed and frustrated and things like that. But yeah, I mean, same thing as you either explode or you like cave into yourself and you're like, I don't want to deal with anything, I'm just going to focus on my little box. So yeah, I've totally been in both situations. And one of the things that when I first started to really start dealing with my emotions and becoming more emotionally intelligent was I actually started to figure out my triggers. Like I really had to figure out internally and be really introspective of, okay, am I starting to get too stressed out? Am I starting to get too overwhelmed? Am I getting into this mood or mental state to where I don't feel baseline normal? And, when I realized that like when I had a stressful situation come up, like a fire came up that I had to put out, how did I feel about that? How did I respond to that? Did I, get really upset? Did I get really negative? Things like that. And when I recognized those triggers, I kind of created a plan for myself. Okay, if I'm feeling like this, I'm going to get up and walk around for 10 minutes. Or, if I'm feeling a certain way, I'm going to, shut my door, call my husband and have him talk me down. Just figuring out things like that. So figuring out your triggers and then also creating a plan of how to combat those triggers so that you can come back to normal as soon as possible. And then, as my journey kind of progressed, I also got into journaling, and journaling was such a huge thing for me. I mean, I used to be in the mindset of, how is writing my thoughts down on paper going to help me? But when I actually started to do it, I realized how much emotions and thoughts I actually was able to release on paper, and how much journaling actually made me feel better, and how I actually saw, in my writing, different patterns, different thought patterns, different behaviors that I had, that also helped me to become more self-aware of what was going on inside of me. And then the other thing that I talk to new managers about who, are coming to me super overwhelmed, like you mentioned, they don't really know how to manage and control everything that's going on, is one of the things that I teach them is that I call it the hats of leadership. So recognizing that there's actually three main categories that I found that managers actually have. And you touched upon quite a few of them, but the first one is what I call behind the scenes. So like you're saying, the stuff that happens behind the scenes that most people aren't even aware is happening, that you have the responsibility of taking care of, making sure that operations are running smoothly. And then the second category is what I call in the spotlight. So this is what people are seeing. This is how people are seeing you lead your team, and motivating and inspiring them and things like that. And then the third category is what I call in the director's chair. And that's, where you are seeing the bigger picture of things, where you are like future casting, and being able to be proactive with things that are happening. So kind of having that type of mindset. And then in each category, there are different skills that a manager needs in the different categories. So obviously the operational stuff is more hard skills. At the end of the spotlight, being a leader is more soft skills. And these are things that we normally this is the category where we are most unprepared for. And then the director's chair is a combination of hard skills and soft skills. So being able to analyze data as well as strategically think, have critical thinking, but then also be thinking big picture and seeing different perspectives and taking, different decision-making skills and things like that. And then the other thing that I help people recognize is that these different categories also require different parts of the brain. So your first category, the operational side, is more of a conscious, using more of the conscious brain, where you're utilizing skills that you're conscious of, and how to obtain that knowledge if you don't already have it. And then the being a leader, working with your team, having those people skills, that's more subconscious. And then the last category is more a mix of the both. So what I work with people who are super overwhelmed is creating that role clarity and recognizing that you can put things in boxes. I found that it's super helpful when people know that they can put something in a category and not have it like everywhere and juggling things all the time. So if they can, again, create that role clarity from the different hats of leadership, and then start to recognize, okay, creating my leader identity, and also figuring out what your priorities are based on the goals that you have for yourself, as well as the goals that your upper management has for you and your department. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I love how you broke down the parts of the brain, because that's definitely not taught in any
Oh
manager
no.
format that I've ever seen in my life. When I
Yeah.
started parts of the brain, it really just opened my mind up to honestly how capable we all are of like reprogramming ourselves. Like you can sit there and read the book all day and go, oh, this information's really cool. I really want to apply it to my life. But putting it into practice, oh
Mm-hmm.
my heavens, it's been one of the hardest things I've ever done in my entire life, has been rewiring my brain and being
Yes.
in like the moment, the in between moments is what I would say. I find myself
Mm-hmm.
too often and I'm just like, hey, we're rewiring our brain. It's going to be a little weird right now. Like, just keep going.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, for me, discovering mindset and actually what it is. I mean, as a person, growing up, I always thought that mindset was more about your attitude or your personality. But when I really dove into learning about mindset and understanding that, our brains are super powerful, and most of the time they're working against us just because of how our brain has been wired from us growing up and our experiences and things like that. But when we get into a position of authority, you kind of I call it a Pandora's box of insecurities and negativities pops open. Then again, nobody forewarns us about. And I found that, this in Pandora's box of you dealing with these internal struggles is actually the root cause of the external struggles that a manager has, like managing different personalities, managing their time and their energy properly, and making decisions and having difficult conversations. Those are all external challenges that actually are rooted in the internal challenges that they're having. So, teaching people about that, helping them to recognize that, and helping them to start to overcome those internal challenges so that they'll actually start to see those external challenges kind of disappear in front of their eyes. And it's really cool when they start to go through that journey and see that.
That's great. I love it. So if I was like, hey, pitch yourself to people right now that you know need your help, what are your quick advice? What is your pitch that you're going to give us to please come let me help you be a better manager outside of what your company wants you to be?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I definitely tell managers, if you are struggling in your position, if you just can't find your footing, if you don't feel confident or effective or feel lost and flailing like you don't know what you're doing, first of all, you're not alone. I think all of us have gone through this period because it's just such a hard transition. And again, there's very little to no preparation and very little to no proper training to what you need to really be successful in your new position. So number one, realize that you're not alone. Number two, do not be afraid to ask for help. Asking for help is not a weakness, it's actually a strength. So any of that, programming in your brain that you have about asking for help or people telling you that you shouldn't do that, kind of kick all that aside, because it's okay to ask for help. And if you need it's here. And, you don't have to necessarily work with me. If you resonate with me, then please, reach out. But if you don't, there are other leadership coaches out there who can help you, that if you resonate with them, just reach out to them, ask for a chat to see, if their programs are a good fit for you. Call me and we can set up a chat to see if my programs are a good fit for you. But, please don't continue to struggle and, be unhappy and not have proper work-life balance, because our time is finite. And the more time that you're kind of wasting struggling is time that, you're taking away from yourself and fulfilling, and having a fulfilling, rich life. And, I was able to survive and I was able to figure out how to become an effective and confident leader. I definitely don't recommend that people go the route that I did, because it took me years. I made a lot of mistakes. I wasted a lot of time. So, find somebody who has done it and has an effective program for you to be able to do it quicker and with less mistakes. But please, yeah, definitely get help if you're struggling. Don't continue to do it alone. Because you'll just continue to repeat what you're doing because you're not changing anything, and just know that you're not alone.
You are hired. That was beautiful. Wonderful. So all the information down below for your business, all of the links that you could possibly get, all of the information. You also have, is it a free ebook that they're able to download?
Yeah, so I have a free ebook, and it's called The Manager's Essential Guide for not just managing, but truly leading. So that is a free download that they can get on my website. I think I'm going to give you the link too. And I also have a brand new book that I released last month. That's my second book that I've published, and it's called Leader Mindset Activation. And it's actually a 3-phase methodology that I came up with in activating the proper mindset that you need to be a leader. So
beautiful. Wonderful. Well, I have went back in time in my memory, have full knowledge that I could have totally used you through most of my management. Maybe I wouldn't have been so burnt out or made as many mistakes as I did. But I love your company. I hope it succeeds and you help so many people not reach that level of frustration and burnout that so many people do in the industries.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, definitely trying to help those managers out there. They're capable. You guys are capable. It's just you need the proper guidance and support.
Wonderful. Well, again, Angilie, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see all of you on the next episode, okay?
Hold up. Don't think you're getting out of here without any music. Vitality Exposed is going to bring you a song called I Got You by Nightcap and Vicky Vox. Go ahead and check it out on the Safe Space playlist, link below. You can find all of the artists I preview on 60 plus episodes. But right now, enjoy this track. Love you guys.
Yeah, baby, I got